We can be heroes just for one day. Nominate the youth sports volunteer that you know for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contest. And listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week. And it's sponsored by Hercules, First Federal Credit Union, and Beehive Meals.
DJ and PK, the countdown is on. Less than a month now to the NBA draft.
I'm excited for it.
That could shake some trades loose. And Markkanen coming up on the after that, we'll hit the 1-year anniversary of Markkanen signing his extension, and then they'll be able to trade him. What? Oh, what might the Jazz be able to get if they trade Lauri Markkanen?
A-LOT.
Yeah, there it is.
I was thinking about this. I've been thinking about it for a couple days now. He's clearly available for the right price. And you can argue everybody is. But some are more realistic. Steph Curry's not being traded, right? So you have to take into some realism. And I can make an argument that he's the best player legitimately available.
Is Giannis available?
I don't know that he is.
I would put that out there. But I get your point. There aren't going to be many pieces as valuable as him. He's in his prime. He's tall, he's long, he can shoot the ball really well.
Yeah.
That seems to be the player that everybody wants.
See, Giannis is going to be too much. So that's why I get the point. Giannis is better than Markkanen. I'm not arguing that. But the cost for Giannis is going to be so outrageous that I think that it's going to cause a lot of people to say, nah, it's not worth it. Whereas Markkanen, the cost won't be as outrageous. And because of that and his skill level and his age, I think he can be argued the best player legitimately available. I realize Giannis is I would be open to a trade. But what are you going to get for him that's going to make the Bucks do it right now?
Looking at you, San Antonio. How about that number 2 pick?
See, I think, though, that the Bucks would want more than that, whereas the Jazz wouldn't. You see, that's why I'm saying that Markkanen becomes maybe the best, most tradable. If I'm Milwaukee, do I want to really plunge that deep into a rebuild?
Want? No.
No, well, the Jazz did. They wanted to.
Or they felt like they had to, but I get your point.
But they didn't have to when they did it.
I don't think they did.
They chose to do it. That's inarguable. They chose to do it.
They did.
You had 2 years where you could have potentially convinced Mitchell that this is the place.
The Milwaukee thing,
the other guy.
They could move him, and they could also go the Portland scenario where everybody is like, well, what Portland needs to do is move Lillard. But Portland just really didn't want to.
Yeah, but
Lillard didn't want to.
Lillard was way older.
And it sat for a year or two.
Okay, so
until they finally did it. Yeah. Right? But there were people saying 2 years before that, well, they're going to have to do this. They're painted into a corner.
And I don't think the Bucks are in that situation yet.
Ooh. I think they're where Portland was a couple years before Portland traded Lillard. And the question is, will they decide to do it? Because the Jazz could have let it ride for a year or two. But Jazz management, ownership, all the executives, right, decided, hey, we're going to have less trade value in a year or two. And is it really going to work in the next year or two? Let's just do it now. Man, rip the Band-Aid off. Do it now.
Yeah, okay, but you're comparing Mitchell and Gobert to Giannis.
Everybody's best player is the best player to them.
You trade Giannis. The second you entertain the idea he has less value, you're not. There's no way you're going to get equal value.
You're not.
So you're never. They're in a different situation.
But that's to your point that because they're not going to get equal value, they're going to demand a lot.
Yeah,
and then is it worth?
Then you go to Dallas.
So is it worth it for an NBA team to say, okay, Giannis, we got to pick a number. Let's say Giannis is 20% better than Lauri. I don't know, whatever number.
Okay.
Is it worth that extra 20%? All the stuff we're going to have to pay to make that trade.
You're going to trade Giannis for Dylan Harper?
They're going to want more. We'll see what they settle for.
That's right, but the Spurs are going to give more.
Right.
Whereas the Jazz, yes, you're going to trade Markkanen for Dylan Harper. Yes. Yes, we are. So that's what I'm saying.
Right.
The legitimately trade value.
Not the best player, but he could be the best value trade.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
There it is. I'm
glad
we got to it. Or I got to it.
Maybe I didn't explain it as good.
But a best trade value. Yeah.
Yeah, I use the word legitimate, but value is probably a better word. I get it. Yeah.
You're going to have to overpay to get Giannis. And Giannis is better.
Yeah, cool,
but
clearly.
Will it really be worth it?
Yeah, because you give so much stuff up.
Then you don't have a championship team.
Yeah,
so
you just kind of it's kind of a wash there. Whereas the Jazz, yeah.
And if that
give us a number 2 pick.
Ainge, by not talking, we don't really know what he thinks, right? Maybe he could talk and not.
He's grieving right now. His dog died.
Oh yeah, that's always hard. Losing
It's awful.
Losing a family pet is hard.
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, he put it on social media. I feel for the guy.
Everybody who's lost a favorite pet is now.
Pets, on and on. Yeah. One guy told me that he knew of a guy lost his dog, and he immediately got another dog, the same breed, and gave him the same name. So I felt like it didn't happen.
So it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Nope, it's right there.
Yeah. King of Queens did an episode on that where Doug, what was her name? His wife's name. She goes, Doug, you're 30 years old and you're playing with your childhood dog. That doesn't work that way. Your parents never told you the dog died.
Carrie was her name.
I was going to say Karen, but I knew that wasn't it.
Played by Lauri.
Yeah. Carrie's, Dog, don't you see what's happened here?
No, and I don't want to.
Yeah. So I think that you would jump at that. Maybe I'm off base. I don't think the Bucks would jump at Dylan Harper. Whereas the Jazz, absolutely.
Tony says nothing good comes from a trade with Lauri in it unless it's the number 1 pick. That won't happen, so no go.
I disagree.
Tony, not only do you disagree, and I disagree, I think Yak disagrees, and I'm really sure they disagree in the Jazz front office.
Right. Because Markkanen, he's making $40-some million, so he's getting paid all sorts of money. But basically, basketball life is just being wasted here. Whereas Dylan Harper wouldn't. And if you got to keep the 5th pick, and if you had 2 top 5ers, oh my goodness gracious.
Now you got to hit on them.
That would be the best thing that happened to this franchise since the statues.
If you hit on them.
I think they will hit on them.
Then that would be awesome. That would be awesome.
I'm confident
if
they have
hit on
2
top 5 picks, that would really jumpstart the. And the best thing is, it's not that the team would be awesome right away. I wouldn't expect that.
No.
If it was that, then that's just a bonus. But it's like now, once you have the young guys, you don't have to sit anybody. Just run everybody out there. You're probably going to lose a lot because young guys usually lose a lot. And if they don't, then it's awesome. And they're going to be awesome.
Yeah,
but you could just go for it. And I don't need to see, 50 wins next season, but it'd be awesome to see them trying to win.
Oh, play to win?
Yeah, just play to win.
Yeah.
And I know it's young guys, and RSLs, we were just talking about how ice cold, not high school, ice cold they are. Well, they're playing 18, 20, and 21-year-old guys. So, yeah, the 25 and 30-year-olds are beating the snot out of them.
Yeah, in the NBA and really in sports, especially in the NBA now, you have young and you have really young.
Right.
The Jazz are really young.
Really young.
Young is 22, 23, 24.
And maybe if you're out there with 22, 25, 26-year-old, you can do some winning in Oklahoma City if you hit.
And I almost think, and I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there, that Markkanen is too valuable not to trade, which sounds crazy to say. It's like an oxymoron. But I think the league looks upon him with high value, especially if you slot him in as your second or even third option. If he went to San Antonio and you had Big Vic, you had Castle, you had Fox, you have Markkanen, those four, and if Chris Paul wants to come back and just be a leader and be a passer, that team is on to something.
He probably won't do the 25 points a game he did in his All-Star season because he won't get as many
it's
catches.
about winning. It ain't about points.
Exactly. And can he be efficient?
Of course he can.
He wasn't last year, but I'm just going to write that off to a bad year. The 2 previous years, if he can recapture any of that, then you're on to something.
I believe he can.
Last year was, I think, a bad year because it was a wasted year, and he knew it all year long. He knew it.
Hard to be mentally in gear.
Yeah. When you know, if I play well and we start to win, I'm going to get pulled.
Yeah.
And if we do win, then I'm not playing the next game. It's a weird cycle to be caught in. And I think it impacted how efficient he was.
And I wouldn't want to be
caught
into it 2 years in a row if I were him.
Nope.
So I would want out and go along that direction. I think that he is a massive piece towards getting this thing jump-started by a couple of levels. I would press hard for all 3 teams ahead of me because I don't believe that the Mavericks would be interested in any form of a trade that involves Cooper Flag.
I agree with that, but they have to be called and that has to be explored anyway. And just like you got 2 tracks here. You know, if you go with Markkanen, then when you get Kyrie back, you can go for it.
No.
I wouldn't do it if I were the Mavericks, but did you think they were going to trade Luka Doncic in that deal? You got to call him. You got to let people trip over
not
themselves.
in that deal, but trade a guy who's not serious about his conditioning and is still young, where your what's the word I'm looking for in terms of being able to eat and still not gain weight metabolically.
Yeah.
Metabolism.
No, I get your point.
He's only going to get fatter unless he gets serious.
Trading Luka Doncic wasn't outrageous. It could be defended, and there's some logic to it. Trading it for what they got is indefensible.
I'll buy that. At the same time, you got to let it play out. Because if you can't always judge one move based solely on one move.
True story.
Basketball is a puzzle that has to be put together.
The pieces of the puzzle have to fit.
Yeah, and so if they can get now, they're expecting Davis not to get hurt is stupid, but having Irving go down
didn't know Kyrie
is a massive blow.
They didn't know Kyrie was going to blow his knee out.
Right. If they can come back in 2 years and you got Irving is still good, Davis is still good, Flag, maybe you got something. They got some decent role players, so we'll have to see.
There could be a lot of guys on the move. There's there's a whole line of logic out there. Whether Dallas will sign off on it or not is another thought. But they should trade AD. They should trade AD to somebody who's in a win now mood and try to get young players. Young players you like and you value.
His value is decreasing.
I agree. All the more reason to move him right now.
Oh, well, that was all the more reason not to acquire him.
I agree with that too. But now you have, so
I don't know who would be jumping to get him. If you got him on 50 cents, I would say that. But that's for their issues. I'm more concerned about the Jazz. And the Jazz, they really can jumpstart it. Right now, if they just kept the 5th and the 21st, I would be disappointed.
Something's got to happen.
Even if they get 2 really good players, I would still be disappointed in the short term.
I think I'm not the expert on collective bargaining, but I don't think they can trade him draft night. So
I don't care.
Right. But whoever can draft, and then you can pull the trade off, on whatever date he becomes eligible for a trade.
Right. I get that.
Yeah.
I'm not
So if there's a high
saying
draft pick
going into the.
Yeah.
I'm talking about going into the season.
summer, yeah, over the course of the summer, not necessarily on draft night.
Right. Yeah. Because you see who you got and all that type of stuff. And then the stories can get out whenever he's available to be traded. That stuff gets out anyway.
It usually does.
And so you can't, some archaic rule says you can't do it till whatever date. I get all that. I don't pay attention to all that. I'm not
Doesn't really
interested.
matter. There's no game in July or August anyway.
Yeah, those rules don't really work for me. But I mean, they're out there, and I'm not.
I like
that
your
into it.
answer, A space LOT. That's what they can get for Markkanen. Now, do they want that in a young player? Do they want that in a draft pick? Who would obviously be very young. When I say young player, I was talking more about your early 20s.
I got it. That's I would include some other assets too. If you can do it, if the other team, whether it's San Antonio, Philadelphia, or maybe even Charlotte, obviously the second pick I'd give more, the third pick I'd give a little less, the fourth pick I'd give a little less than that. I would try, especially 2 or 3, and I keep 5.
You should repeat what you said yesterday because people, unfortunately, do not hear every segment of every show. But there are a couple things that you think about where the Jazz are leaning or not leaning in the draft.
Yeah, I don't think they're as high on Bailey as some folks are, and I think they're high on the Oklahoma point guard.
And I was reading a review of the combine that Bailey measured like 2.5,
Shorter.
3 inches shorter.
6'7".
He's 6'7", 6'7.5", something
And
like
he
that.
doesn't have an afro.
He's
so
not
can't go that high.
He's not 6'10".
No.
So yeah.
Yeah.
On the list of things, and no one thing is the thing that cools them, but lots of factors come together.
6'7"
right?
versus 6'10" is a big deal.
That's a big deal. DJ PK, Matt Murschel, UCF Knights beat and college football writer for the Orlando Sentinel, joins us next. The spring football tour. Can Scott Frost recapture the magic? Stay with us.
Accessing.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
Joining us now, Ian Fitzsimmons.
Hans, Crazy Wings, George's. Did you hit it?
I didn't get to hit it, man. We ended up at the Brazos Grill. I got their chicken fried steak, but they did have these thing called the armadillo balls at the Brazos River that was really good, but it's not the Crazy Wing.
Can you go ahead and just lift hands saying they did have these things called armadillo balls, which were really good?
I feel like Chevy Chase in the movie Funny Farm.
You polish off that plate and you break the record.
Stand back, everybody. The record falls tonight.
Now, there's a man who knows when he's got something good in his mouth.
On that note, mic drop. Bam. Done.
Catch Hans and Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We're joined now by Matt Murschel, UCF Knights beat writer and college football writer for the Orlando Sentinel. Orlando hosting the Big 12 meetings. Everybody, coaches, ADs, the whole Big 12 world is descending on Orlando. Matt, with all this going on, thanks for taking a few minutes out to talk with us. We appreciate it.
No problem. How are you guys doing this morning?
Good. Now, usually we do the spring football tour. For multiple reasons. One, college football is a big deal here. Two, we're not talking about the Jazz in the NBA playoffs, right? So we have time to do a little deep dive here, and we're going to spend a lot of time here, transfer portal, who's coming, who's going, and all that. But let's start with a coach, because this is really intriguing. We've been doing this for a long time. We're old guys. We can give you a list of coaches that have gone back to a school where they had success, and they rarely come anywhere near that. And we had to do that because Utah State went back to Gary Anderson, who had 4 good years, built something, won the last WAC title, and then moved on to Wisconsin, Oregon State. When he came back, it didn't work. It fell flat right out of the gate. It just did not work. So what's the logic on bringing Scott Frost back? Is he that good a coach? Did he catch lightning in a bottle last time? Can he catch lightning in a bottle again? Is everybody on board with this?
Yeah, I think there's a good portion of people who are on board on this. I mean, I know the administration is fully behind, bringing Scott back. It was an interesting move for sure, as you mentioned. It's a hit or miss type mentality when it comes to bringing a coach back to a second time. And when Scott was here the first time, he did have that success. He took a winless team in 2015, and next year they won 6 games, and then the year after that they went undefeated and beat Auburn, in the Peach Bowl. So this mentality was, okay, maybe we can bring him back. Maybe, things will have that same sort of success. Scott has grown a lot over the last 8 years. I talked with him several times over the spring. This is something that, he really, there was no other job out there that he really wanted to go for. He was working as a consultant with the LA Rams. He was happy doing that job. He wasn't really even thinking about getting back into coaching at the college level. But, when the UCF job opened up, it became intriguing, and he decided this was the best chance I'm going to have. I'm going to go back, because he did like his experience at UCF. So, Terry Mahajer, the athletic director, sat down and met with him several times and talked about, do you think you can do this? Come back. What do you think? And as the process went along, both sides just realized this seemed like it was going to be a good fit. And so that's why Scott comes back. And now remains to be seen how this transition is going to work. It's like I mentioned, it's been 8 years. A lot has changed in the college landscape, NIL, transfer portal. Now we're getting into rev share. So it's going to be a challenge for him. And he's admitted that. It's been a whirlwind experience already to try to get back to it. Will he have success this year? I'm not sure. But, if something pays off in the next couple of years, I think then, the goodwill that he's gained from the fan base and from the boosters and donors, I think this move could end up paying off.
I'm sure you were in the audience at the time. I listened to what was posted on their website. It sounded like it was a post-spring game analysis, and you guys were asking him, and he wouldn't even name one player in the time that I listened to him. So, what about the quarterbacks? What about the running back? And so the thing that caught my eye, besides refusing to name it, because I'm trying to get some information, right? So I'm prepared for the interview, and he didn't name one guy. So, but I'm looking at other stuff to get there, and he said that no quarterback, nothing emerged from the 4 quarterbacks, which was a quote. He was willing to talk about team speed. He thought that was pretty good. So as I look at these quarterbacks, at least 3 with Jackson and Brown and Fancher, I think may have gotten injured in that game. The best I could find is Taven Jackson has had 6 starts for those 2 years at Indiana. I think he had 4 and then 2. And I'm thinking, just from a distance, that he would be the leader as far as who is the starting quarterback to begin the season. What do you see and think?
Yeah, I think he's definitely the front runner going into the fall camp as the possible start of this season. I think everyone would agree on that fact. I think in Scott, and all the coaches really did this, I thought, throughout the spring, is they were very careful about not wanting to promote individual players so much so as but promoting positions and promoting, groups of guys. I think that was a very smart, ploy in his mind, thinking that with the spring transfer portal, you don't want to put too many guys out there, maybe that they would, all of a sudden, got other schools interested in your quarterbacks or interested in some of your other players. I think that was one of the reasons. I think another reason is, Scott has said many times he's trying to develop that team atmosphere. And he was really concerned that if they started to put people out front, that maybe people would start to feel like, okay, well, that I don't have a chance, or I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be able to earn a spot, or this is what's going to happen. And so he was very careful of that. So I think in the quarterback room especially, I think Tavon, like I mentioned, is definitely the front runner. But I think Ja'Cory Brown, a guy who was here last year, who had a limited role as a backup, he started, I think, one game. He's going to have an opportunity. I think if he looked decent in spring, if he can kind of maybe push Taven to try to get a chance to go for that starting role. I think Cam Fancher, who got banged up in the last open practice, hurt his hand. I think he'll be fine going in. He's got a lot of experience. He started a lot of games. But he didn't look very strong in spring, but he still believes that he's got a chance to go after it. So those 3 guys really, in my mind, are going to be the make that run in the quarterback. I think all 3 fit well into what they want to do offensively. This is going to be an offense that's going to be similar to what he did, what Scott ran in 2016 and 2017. But, again, there's going to be some aspects of it that they're going to have to implement as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how these quarterbacks kind of work out. We got a chance to talk to all 4 of them, and it was still an interesting move.
Quarterback's got to have somebody to throw the ball to. Kobe Hudson and Jacoby Jones were the top 2 wide receivers statistically last year, and they're both off to the NFL. Of course, the transfer portal, Marcus Burke comes in from Florida. I guess they held 3 guys out of the spring stuff you were allowed to watch, and another guy got hurt, Day Farmer, who used to be at West Virginia. Can you begin to sort out the wide receivers any better than you can sort out the quarterbacks?
No, actually, that's funny. It seems to be a theme throughout. The wide receiver group is probably the one that has the most interested in watching outside of quarterbacks because, again, there are no really established players. They're younger guys who got a lot of speed, got a lot of athleticism, didn't have a chance to play. They brought in some guys from the transfer portal. Mentioned DJ Black, Marcus Burke, Dwayne Thomas was another guy they brought in. They brought in some guys that they felt like would help them out. And, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but no one's really kind of separated themselves at this point of being who's going to be the main target. So, I mean, it's a position I think it's going to be fun to watch where guys kind of, end up, kind of shuffling themselves in, especially going into fall camp. They are a very fast group, probably some of the fastest players on the team, and that's good news for whoever's going to be quarterback because they're going to need to have an advantage to go out there and have these guys make plays. And so, to me, I think it's the one guy. I've said this basically on every position group. It's there's a lot of unknowns, but there's a lot of things that make these players, I think, feel like they've got equal opportunities to try to get a shot to get a starting spot because there isn't that maybe definitive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 setup when it comes to the roster.
One of the things about the Big 12 last year, as we had both BYU and Utah into it, so we have transitioned away from the Pac-12, obviously, I thought it was the year of the running back, the running back was very dominant, and you were covering one last year with R.J. Harvey. I believe he got drafted, second round Broncos, something like that. So you look at their running backs. You got Stacey Gage. I think he's back. You never know if it's transfer portal because you got to stay on it every day. But I'm intrigued by this Jaden Nixon. Over 900 yards at Western Michigan. His first couple years was at Oklahoma State. Not to say that they're going to be another Harvey, but it looks like they may have some talent there.
Yeah, I think that's another position. Again, young, athletic. They've had some veterans going in. Miles Montgomery was a backup last year to R.J. Harvey. When you have a guy who rushes for over 1,500 yards, Miles didn't get a lot of carries, but it was kind of time came into spot, Harvey to kind of give him a little breather here and there. I think he's going to be huge. I think Jaden comes in, a lot of speed, a lot of, he can really mix things up. I think, those two guys, Miles and Jaden, are probably going to be the 1-2 punch, going out the running back position. I think, Stacey Gage, as you mentioned, is a young guy who's been on the roster but hasn't really had a chance to kind of go out and perform. He's going to get an opportunity. They've got a couple of younger guys and Taven Swint coming in, and they feel like he can come in and make some moves as a freshman. So this is a group right now that I think is going to be very interesting. It's going to be different. I'm not a big believer that they're going to rely on one guy to carry the load of the carries of the running back group. I think what's going to happen is this is going to be a running back by committee type approach. I think you're going to have 2 or 3 guys definitely rotating in and out, getting equal numbers of carries. That's kind of what Scott Frost did in the past. He only had one 1,000-yard rusher and coaching both at UCF and at Nebraska. So he's not a guy that's going to, put a load on one guy. I think he's going to have a lot of different athletes out there to try to see what they can do, whether it's, running, catching the ball, blocking, whatever they need. So I think all 3 of those guys, Miles, Jaden, and Stacey, are going to have great opportunities to pull forward and make some plays and kind of make this offense exciting.
We're joined right now by Matt Murschel, UCF Knights beat and college football writer for the Orlando Sentinel. Defensively, the top 7 tacklers all had eligibility. Did they get through the transfer portal unscathed there? And does the new coaching staff value these guys, or do they want a new set of guys? How much turnovers are going to be there?
No, I think defensively, this team is going to find itself. That's where they're really going to, I think, stand out. I mean, I think this is a group that has an opportunity. They've got some guys who come back who've been around there. Nigel Kelly was one on the defensive end. Malachi Lawrence is another guy that they really liked. John Walker was hurt last year, but he's a standout. They think he's going to be there. I think defensively, this is a group it's really going to have their opportunities to be the best part of this team, especially early on as the offense tries to build up and tries to do what it needs to do. I think that's what it's going to fall into. So they've got pieces. They did get a couple guys that left, but honestly, they brought in a lot of talent. Sincere Edwards is a defensive lineman they brought in from Pittsburgh. He's a local kid. He had a really great start at Pittsburgh, but he wanted to come home and be closer to home. They brought in a guy in Horace Lockett Jr. He's going to be nose tackle. He's the guy that, the coaching staff been really high on. I feel like he could step right in that nose tackle position. So they feel like defensive line is going to be solid. The linebacker group has been rebuilt from scratch. I mean, they really didn't have anyone coming back at all. So, they had to bring in a bunch of transfers on that front. They brought in guys with experience they feel like can step in and be, immediate contributors. And the secondary, they just kept adding pieces and depths and kind of mixing in with some younger players. So they feel like this defense is really going to be the key to what they're going to end up doing this next year.
Are they going to have media availability for these Big 12 meetings in Orlando?
Yeah, they are. We're going to have some limited media availability. I know we're getting some coaches, some basketball coaches are today. Football is going to be tomorrow. They're going to try to have, like we were talking to Scott Frost tomorrow, separate from everything else. I talked a little bit to Scott last night. He was at a function here in Orlando and talked about how, I think he said they brought in 65 newcomers. And yesterday was the first day they actually sat down and really had a chance to, meet as a full team, and so it's definitely been a process for him. And he mentioned that, just getting everyone together. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, the big thing, obviously, with the playoff and who gets what, is that something you're going to pursue in terms of line questioning?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, this is the biggest questions going into this week were the stuff that's going on everywhere. It's just the house settlement, what's going on with that, what's going to go happen to rev share, how are our schools going to be able to handle that? Then you look at the college football playoff, is it going to be 16 teams? We get Brett Yormark on Friday. That's one of the questions is what is your thinking about behind this? I mean, what do you think about what Greg Sankey said the other day? Kind of taking a shot at the Big 12 and the ACC. For talking about doing what's best for the game. I mean, what are those kind of question marks? Because it seems to me right now that no one's on the same page, and it's going to be interesting to see how they can get everyone together. I think it's mid-June, when they're supposed to meet again for the playoff. How are they going to be able to get on the same page? What does the Big 12 believe is what they need to do, and then also what do the other conferences need to do as well?
It seems to me that philosophically, the Big Ten and the SEC, I'm trying to figure out what the SEC's endgame is, other than as many playoff berths and as much money as possible, please. Dan, thank you. And not so much on the please. But it does sound like the SEC might be saying, hey, let's have the 5 conference champs and 11 at-large teams. And the Big Ten has floated this, 4 automatic bids for the Big Ten and the SEC, 2 each for the ACC and Big 12, which looks like that's just set up to create more TV product on the championship weekend. So philosophically, do you want to have a regular season to set up championship weekend, to set up a 16-team tournament, or is that too much and it really devalues the regular season? I'd be interested to hear what the league thinks about that and what the commissioner and the ADs think about that when I say the league. And I wonder if there's anybody talking and whispering about that, or if that's just a bunch of unknowns right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone, everything that I've heard and spoken with some people, is, that everything is on the table right now. I think everyone wants to know exactly what, you've got the SEC, which you mentioned, is leaning now more towards, 1 minute was the 4-2-2, the 4-4-2-2-1 model, where they get 4 automatic bids from the SEC and the Big Ten. Well, now all of a sudden it's looking more like maybe the 5, where you can have the, the 5 conference champions, and then you can go with, the 11 at large. That seems to be something people are favoring now. So where are they at on all this? I mean, that's the problem is some people want this, some people want that, and what works best for it. The SEC is talking about maybe doing playing games, if they do the 4-4-2-2-1. I mean, and all of a sudden you add more games. There's a possibility, legitimately, guys, that there's a team that could play 18 games if we go down that road. And I mean, is that something that college athletics wants to get to? They really want to be in that spot. And if that's the case, if you're the SEC, I agree with what Greg said the other day about, listen, we don't necessarily need to fight hard. I mean, we're going to get teams in no matter what. It's just how many teams they want to get in and how they want to do it. I mean, everyone else is just saying, listen, we want equal opportunities. If I'm the Big 12, if I'm the ACC, I'm not just going to give up things. I'm just not going to kowtow to the SEC and to the Big 10. I'm going to make sure I get as much as I can out of this opportunity, whether it's more spots, automatic spots, whether it's a bigger piece of the pie, whatever it needs to be done, even guarantees to the future of college athletics. I think that's something that you have to fight for. And I think that's something that, I want to ask, Brett about is just, how hard, is this fight. You have to make sure that, if you talk about, what's best for college, that's something you have to think about.
I just want when Bjormark was battling with the Pac-12, he and Kliakov, the commissioner, used to have one-liners trying to one-up each other, and now I want Bjormark to go at Sankey. He's got the quips, so that's all I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, he might, and I could see that happening. Maybe something like that happens, but I think the thing is fans don't understand that as much, and they think it's funny and all and everything, but I think at some point everyone's got to get on the same page. This isn't going to work if everyone's pulling in every other direction, and that's the hard thing. I think. Is the SEC willing to give a little bit? Is the Big Ten willing to give a little bit to make this work? Maybe, but it has to be presented. Everybody has to be unified on this. And I just think right now it's just a bunch of people, making a bunch of moves and pulling different directions. And I just think that's not going to be good for what they're trying to get accomplished.
Matt, we appreciate the time. It is a busy week for you. Thanks for giving us a few minutes.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Matt Murschel, UCF Knights beat and college football writer for the Orlando Sentinel, with the Big 12 ADs and coaches descending on the city for the Big 12 meetings. All right, DJ PK, when we come back, it's a Win Tickets Wednesday. We're giving away concert tickets to see Breaking Benjamin and 3 Days Grace at the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater, September 27th, and we'll do that right after the break. Stay with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
Now, every team has been assigned a Heisman contender. Here's the dirty secret about BYU. Its best offensive player barely got to play last season. LJ Martin has serious ability when healthy. Is Aaron Roderick comfortable enough having a guy who will carry the ball 23 times? And I love this pick because that means that BYU will be centered around the run first, and then everything else can come from that, and I think that's where they're going to have a ton of success. The best thing that can happen to Jake Retzlaff's career
100%
is LJ Martin.
Yep.
Not just being healthy, but the run game being healthy, and the run game getting 5.5 per. That'd be amazing.
Your first best friend is a tight end, but another best friend is that running back, because if he's doing his thing, it makes things a lot easier for you. It's a lot easier to find guys open because defenses are keying on the run. So that would be very important for BYU.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Caller 12 right now, 801-575-ZONE wins concert tickets on a Win Tickets Wednesday. Today, we're giving away a pair of tickets to see Breaking Benjamin and 3 Days Grace at the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on September 27th. They're free. Caller 12 right now, 801-575-ZONE. 801-575-9663. Call now. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We are not all the way through the spring football tour, but we just went through UCF. And as you listen to one media member after another analyze where teams stand in the spring, who do you have a lot of faith in? Who do you have a little faith in? Who are you confused about? And who do you think is absolutely lost and a guaranteed W? Man, I hope my favorite school isn't missing them this year.
Yeah, I don't know that I have anybody as an absolute guaranteed W because I can't get rid of what happened last year in my mind. It's fresh in my mind. It was one of the most remarkable seasons that we've ever seen in terms of predictions. And these are the people that we're talking to. The ones that make the predictions are the guys or the ladies that we're talking to. And so with that in mind, nobody had a clue. And then you just have one critical injury, and it curtails everything. Right now, there was a thing on Athlon Sports I saw and just looking around, and they had Coaches Anonymous talking about stuff that's going on, and they have Arizona being down. So they just go alphabetical order, basically, as I can see it. And they have Arizona being way down. Obviously, that would be the top if you're going to go alphabetically. and it looks like they're in serious decline. Okay, and then it has for ASU would be next, and it ends up that they're going to be at the top of the league for a while. All right, Sam Lemmet goes down. That changes everything. Right? Knock on wood that he doesn't. I don't want anybody to get injured. But that's how fragile all this stuff is. Now, I get last year, I don't have a vote, but as I doped it out, I thought, it was pretty reasonable. It's like when you get down to team 10, 11, 12, all the way down to 16, you're just sort of just picking them. The Devils were picked 16th, but they probably could have been picked 12th. But that's still not very good, right? And they go all the way to the top. So the point is, it's really difficult with injuries factoring in and the transfer portal. I mean, you're bringing in an enormous amount of people for Utah. You're bringing in an enormous amount of people to the stick we just had with UCF. You're not bringing in a lot of people for BYU and ASU because they didn't have a lot of holes to fill, right?
Right.
So I can understand that. To me, I could go easily 5 teams, maybe 6, 7 to play in that final game. So I'm picking the final 2.
Well, that's like last year then.
Because that's all that matters.
There were 7 teams at the top of the league separated by 1 game. An injury here, a penalty there, a drop ball here. That's not much. There are 4 teams at 7-2 and 3 at 6-3. So you think we're going to see a lot of what we saw last year?
But I don't know
Parity
who they
and
are.
chaos.
I can't imagine to that level. Who's ever picked 16th this year, I do not believe will win the league.
Well, that's not going to happen again. Nor will the 2 teams who were picked 1-2 meet in the opener, and then neither team wins again until the last weekend when Utah won.
Well,
that was remarkable.
If you have a major injury and you don't have anybody behind them that's ready to go, there you go.
But 2 teams, Oklahoma State went 0-9 and Utah went 2-7.
Yeah, the 2 most senior coaches who've built great programs.
It didn't make any sense at all.
And
yet, there it is.
Yeah. I would watch out for a team like TCU. I think they may be a little bit of a sleeper.
Coming off of 6-3, and what about Baylor? 6-3 with their quarterback back?
I don't think Baylor is a sleeper.
With their quarterback back, it's too obvious.
I mean, TCU has it back too.
Texas Tech, with all the money they're pouring in that program.
I don't think they're a sleeper at all. Not at all.
But as of the 7, these 3 are in your 7.
Texas Tech, yeah, for sure.
Iowa State's in your 7 with their quarterback back, and they tied for it last year at 7-2.
Absolutely.
And on we go.
And then the Cougars and Devils, yeah.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. When we come back, Andy Bailey, NBA writer and analyst for Bleacher Report. The draft less than a month away. What does he expect for trades at the top? We will talk with Andy coming up next. And what does he think the Jazz are going to do? Stay with us.